My name is Justin. I'm a recovering addict. I was born in Starkville, Mississippi in 1987. I grew up in a lower working class family. My parents were very young when they had me. I've been around drugs and alcohol all my life. The first time I actually got drunk, I was 5 years old. My dad, my uncle, and their friends took me dove hunting. All we had was beer. Like, they didn't bring any juice boxes for the kid or anything, so I ended up chugging Budweiser Tall Boys. And I got drunk and I started chasing a butterfly with the pellet gun, and my dad beat the crap out of me because I could have really hurt somebody. It became a regular thing when I was around 13, 14 years old. I was taking pills, opiates and benzodiazepams. I was stealing them from people, my mom and my dad. I got into cocaine later on in high school. It really took a turn for the worse when I was 17 years old, and that was the first time I did heroin. But I always felt different. I always had this feeling of inferiority towards everybody. I was around 17 the first time I went to rehab for opiates and cocaine. At the time, I was still young and stupid and immature, so I really didn't soak in what was being taught to me in that rehab. I actually ended up getting kicked out of that rehab for doing drugs in the rehab. And I just wasn't ready. I hadn't felt enough pain at that point. So I got kicked out of that rehab and I continued to use. Things got worse. My heroin addiction really took on another life of its own. I was in and out of jail. I got out of jail in 2008, and that was the first time that I actually had an honest desire to change somewhat. But I managed to stop, and I managed to stop by going to 12-step meetings. And I would love to say that relapse isn't a part of my story, but it is. I stayed clean for about a year. By going to 12-step meetings, and life was really good. I was able to maintain a good job. I had things in my life that I'd never had while using heroin, but complacency and not doing the things that were suggested of me within the 12-step program, I eventually started using again, and I used for about 3 months. What opiates did for me was it numbed every feeling I could ever have, and it numbed me to the world. I didn't feel anything anymore. Heroin at the time wasn't really prevalent where I was from, but me and my best friend, we were doing a job in Columbus, Mississippi, which is about 30 minutes from my hometown, and he ended up finding heroin in Columbus. And we got off work and went and copped, and we did just a little bit, and I remember us driving home, and I remember leaning on the door in his Honda Civic, and I remember it being the absolute most beautiful feeling I've ever felt in my life. Having the wind in my face, and I remember Stone Temple Pilots' Interstate Love song coming on. Every time I hear that song to this day, I think about this particular instant because that just stuck in my head. But I remember it just being the absolute most beautiful feeling I've ever felt in the world, and nothing could ever top it. The problem with that is that every time after that is never the same. It's never the same. But I was really attracted to the way that made me feel. There's a reason why people do it so much despite its dangerous effects, It's not a popular, life-threatening drug for no reason, and that's what really kicked it off for me. I'd met my wife while I was drinking and partying, and she started doing opiates with me. It was her first time ever doing it, and it was my first time touching heroin in several years. We had an OD that should have costed us our life. I hit my wife, who was sitting to the left of me. Then I hit myself. I look to my left, and my wife is laid back, turning blue. And I begin to freak out. And I got on the phone and I immediately called 911.
911, where's your emergency?
Yes, I have a girl. I think that she might be overdosing on some sort of drug right now. Baby.
I was becoming more and more incoherent, and I couldn't give them the address to where we were.
I did.
And you can't see an apartment number? Sir, are you in building 11? Hello?
I fell out, and the only thing that saved our lives was when I passed out, my phone was still on the hook, and the 911 dispatcher was able to get our GPS coordinates and get there to save us right on time. And immediately thinking, holy shit, I just murdered my wife with heroin. I began freaking out. They had to keep me under control because I didn't know what the hell was. That was the first thing that hit my mind. And so they rushed us to the emergency room. Thankfully, you know, she survived and I survived as well. According to them, I was in worse shape than she was. After it almost killed me, I go right back into the lion's den. I could fill up football fields full of graves of people that should still be here while I should be dead, you know, and they're not, and I don't know if I could ever really explain that. The higher power and the God thing has always been kind of like an iffy area for me within recovery, but you know, as time goes on, it's getting much more difficult for me to not think that there's something on my side. I always ask myself, like, why are these good people that I've known and loved, why are they no longer here and I still am? And I've done way more drugs than any of them. Obviously, I've been given way too many chances. I'd like to, you know, continue to stay clean and continue to work on being a better person in honor of, you know, my friends who have passed away because of this disease. It's crazy how when I go back out after developing all these healthy relationships, being clean, and then I end up going and fucking up again, I forget so easily how many people care and love about, care about me and love me, you know. And then coming back to Phoenix, man, it's just like I meet up with all these people that I knew from recovery, and it's, man, they don't shame me or anything, man. It's all love, dude, and it's an incredible feeling, you know, and that's something that I really need, and it's something that I cherish. My life gets infinitely better when I get clean and when I stop using drugs and when I'm able to be honest with myself about my issues, you know. And I don't mean better as in financially better, you know. I mean, yeah, those things happen as a byproduct of it, but I mean just feeling good about myself, you know, having the ability to like the person that I am. This time I really want to do everything I can to protect what I have internally and externally, you know, and there are things that I do to make sure that I protect that, you know. I go to meetings, I work steps, I try to be of service wherever I can. Something that's really huge for me that's always kind of been extremely prevalent within my time in recovery is physical fitness. It's exercise, it's working out, you know. There's a direct correlation between somebody's physical well-being and their mental well-being. You know, if I'm being physically fit and taking care of myself physically, I am mentally and spiritually healthy as well. You know, so that's a huge part of my recovery. It's something I kind of get obsessive over, like addicts tend to do, but the world is a beautiful place depending on how I choose to look at it, you know, from my perspective. And I have a nice perspective today, a nice positive perspective on the world today. You know, please get help. Don't be another statistic, man. You know, say fuck you to the disease of addiction.